Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining today's EAC webinar. This is Cassie Stumo. I am the marketing specialist here at EAC. Today, we will be talking about best practices for creating AR content with Vuforia Studio. We will begin today's session with an introduction of EAC, and then Todd Leavenow will be taking over. The session is being recorded. Everyone will receive a replay after the webinar pending any technical difficulties. Please submit your questions and we will answer them after the presentation. So for those of you who don't know who we are, I'll start off with a quick introduction of EAC. Our mission is to transform the way companies design, manufacture, connect to, and service their products. Our goal is to help companies bring their products to market with the right tools and resources to be successful. We have if you want to go to the next slide, thank you. We have a range of products and services that we sell, including CAD, PLM, and SLM software, and we offer the Form 2 3D printer for as low as $34.99. We implement IoT and AR into business strategies, help with design and engineering projects, and we offer PTC certified training courses. So, we are here for your product development needs. Today, we are focusing on how you can transform your operations by using the right augmented reality authoring tool. So I'll go ahead and pass it on to Todd to discuss how you can add AR content creation to your skill set.
All right. Good morning. Hello, everyone. So today we're here to talk about augmented reality and how you can leverage some of the CAD data and information that you're building across the rest of the organization and share that value and improve the development process. So just taking a look at the different segments of the organization, your enterprise, there's different ways that you can use this augmented reality information. So if we think about it from the design standpoint where the content is typically created initially, you could use augmented reality for digital design reviews, sharing information. So instead of dragging the CAD workstation into the conference room, you can actually look at this in a web browser or something like that and do your augmented reality and basically bring the design to the conference room and do your design review there. Similarly, across the rest of the segments, right, you can use this information to create things like work instructions, assembly instructions. In marketing, you could have augmented reality examples of the product that a customer can scan a code or a mark and actually get product information and spin it around, hold it in their hand, and actually interact with that product right there in the showroom floor. If you think about the service side of the organization, same type of thing, right? You might have service and inspection information. You might need to do regular interval services on a daily, weekly, or monthly type basis. And instead of having to drag out the 3-ring binder and sit next to the machine out in the field, you can take your tablet or your phone and scan that mark and get all that updated information and do the periodic checks and make sure everything is done correctly. Just makes things easier to interact with and not have to drag around a whole bunch of extra information. Thinking about training, right? So if you've got new hires to the organization and you're working in the hazardous environment, you can actually use this augmented reality to simulate or have them work through their maintenance process or assembly process, whatever the case might be, and do that in a safe environment where you can do that without having to worry about things like noise or injuries or things like that getting in the way of the actual learning process. And similarly with the operation and logistics, right? Operators manuals, work instructions, things like that. So really leveraging that data, that content that you're creating from the CAD models and utilizing it for more than just making PDFs and prints and sending that out to manufacturing or production or purchasing to have the parts made. It's really starting to take advantage of all that work that you're putting into the models. So we have some study information, why augmented reality in the enterprise. Again, it's just sort of a summary of the things that I talked about before, but according to a study from Boeing and the University of Iowa, here's some things you can realize by using augmented reality. So you can increase your fix rate and speed up procedures. It just really enhances the user's experience in interacting with the product. Again, with the instructions and guides that you can use, it makes it easy because you've got all the information right there in your fingertip. and you don't have to look at some hard copy printed out page or something in a manual or something like that. You can just hold up the tablet and actually overlay that information right on top of the object that you're looking at and see what's supposed to happen. You can get real-time feedback, meters and measured information from that item because it's sending information back to you, and you can see the process flow, temperatures, pressures, whatever it is that you're measuring, and understand how the process is actually working just by looking at it through your tablet. And of course, you can interact with that digital information in a more natural interface. So again, you can just, it's like you're interacting with it in the environment, but you don't necessarily have to be standing right next to it. You can do your interaction with it in a prototype environment in a conference room or some other test bed environment. So how do we get there? Well, we've got Vuforia Studio, and that's the tool that's going to be used to create these experiences. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But there's really two pieces to it. There's the studio, which is where you actually create the experiences. You compile the information from your CAD model, and you can create a 2D interface or other widgets and get detailed information about that object. And then you create the experience. So we've got a sprinkling of experiences across the top, everything from a showroom floor on the left-hand side to assembly instructions in the middle, or maybe you've got service information, getting real-time diagnostic information back from the machine as it's actually running. So again, the two pieces, Vuforia Studio is where you create the content, and Vuforia View, that's where you can access the experiences and use that either with a tablet or a phone or HoloLens or other augmented reality type device. So talking about the details and the tools, Vuforia Studio, it's an authoring environment that you use to create these immersive AR experiences. So it's web-based, right? You don't need to be a Java programmer or any super detailed code guru to do this, right? So you're bringing in the CAD models and the information from your CAD content creation, and then you sort of wrap the environment around that and the widgets that you want to create, the 2D interface that you can lay over the top of that to interact with the model and get information back and create a dynamic experience for the user that you can fly around this object. You can make it look like you're sitting in the cab of the loader. You can interact with it, push controls and get real-time feedback about what's actually happening in that machine. And again, it's pretty intuitive, right? You don't need to be a super duper coder, right? You don't need to have a big resume as far as software development skills in order to create these experiences and create the environment. So here's a closer look about the Vuforia Studio, sort of a workflow that you go through to create the experience and then build out the information from there. So you start by creating the experience. You bring in the model that you want to actually create the experience around, and you've got different built-in widgets. So we're showing here on the screen we've got pressure and temperature and different dynamic widgets that you can interact with and connect up sensors that might be embedded onto your machine, so you can get that information back in real time from the machine after you scan its thing mark or its spatial target. So from there you create the 3D environment, right? So you can bring the model together with all these different widgets, and then you can create the 2D experience around that. And then from there, you can this user interface, the UX, right? So you can create this 2D environment that overlays over the top of that, and that allows you to dynamically get the information back, and you can push buttons to activate things and show different assembly and disassembly sequences and things like that. From there, you'll publish it. Right, so you'll share that out with everybody else, and that's a really easy process. You just basically click a button that says publish, and you'll connect up to your ThingWorx server, Vuforia server, and publish that information out, and then people can consume that by basically pointing their device at your thing mark or spatial target, and they'll get that experience and then be able to begin interacting with that. Of course, if you want to have more detailed information there, you can use the cascading style sheets and editing things as far as maintaining a consistent look and feel across the documents and the experiences that you're creating, so that it kind of meshes with your company's look and feel for their web pages and things like that. And again, if you want to, there's more depth that's available, right? So if you want to extend in JavaScript, you can build out further details and information and embed your specific requirements and needs inside that Vuforia Studio. So again, at the top, you don't have to be a coder, but there is the capabilities to dive into that and get into that should you need to extend the functionality beyond what's available in the IDE. So again, how it works, right? So this is sort of a loop structure of or diagram of the process flow. So we're going to start here with the CAD models, and from there you bring that into Vuforia Studio. You publish the content to the web, and then from there you can scan that, either a thing mark or a URL, a link, if you will, or the QR code, and then from there you just start to consume the experience, right? So you have different buttons or widgets that you can interact with on the screen, and then depending upon whether you're using the spatial tracking or the thing mark or the model tracking, you could just walk around the device or whatever it is that you're creating your experience around, and then interact with that just by looking at the object through your headset or the tablet or phone or whatever device it is that you're looking at. So again, an overview of the workflow. Lots of stuff on this slide, but starting in the upper left-hand corner, we start the process by logging into Vuforia Studio. You create a new project. The next step then is to bring in whatever CAD object it is you're building your experience around. So you'll bring that in, and this is some optimized 3D content. So it's an agnostic platform, and what I mean by that is that it doesn't really care what flavor of CAD that you're bringing in, because it's going to be an optimized version of that 3D content that we're using in Vuforia Studio. And then from there, you can start to build the experience in the environment around that 3D data. First step in that process is placing the tracking widget. So you need to have some sort of a target for your user to point at so that it knows where to place the object in the 3D space that you're living in, the real world, if you will. So you have this spatial target that you're going to use to kind of start the experience. You place that in Vuforia Studio, and then from there you can add things on like augmentations. You'll have 2D interface. You might have little windows that pop up when you click on an object to get information about that. You might have animations or assembly sequences or disassembly sequences that you can use. So when you click on a button, you'll see something move and go through an explode state or move to its new location to show the assembly or disassembly process. From there, you can use these augmentations. You bind that to a thing definition. So what you're talking about there is basically taking one of these decorations that might be, calling out like a pressure or a temperature or something like that. You'll bind that back to a thing definition, and that's the connection that gets made between the object you see on the screen and the real-time data that the ThingWorks is collecting from that sensor that's on the device. So you're binding that information together. That's where you create that link. So what you see on the screen is actually reading the data real-time from the sensor that's on the machine or a system that you're looking at. Then finally, once you have the experience built up, you'll save that and publish that out to the Vuforia server. And again, like I said before, you can click on that thing marker, that spatial target, and load up the experience. And then your users are on their way looking at the experience that you built for them. So any questions or comments at this point?
No, I don't see any in the queue.
All right. So next up, we'll go to a quick little demo just to show you kind of what the interface looks like and how you might build some things. So let me go ahead and hit escape out of the PowerPoint, and let's go ahead and show this. So what I've got here is Vuforia Studio and a nice little snowmobile with a little experience wrapped around it here. So this was initially brought in through Creo Illustrate, and so I'm using this published representation, this viewable of this Polaris snowmobile, and you can see that this is in a 3D container, right? So it's basically the environment. At this point, there's really nothing else here other than the snowmobile. That's the 3D sort of environment, and I've got the 3D model itself here, right? So I can go ahead and place this in a certain location. If you note here on the right-hand side of the screen, here's the different resources that I've got available for that. That's the CAD content. So I can bring in multiple different models from different assemblies. They don't all have to be built together initially. I can bring in different items and even turn things on and off based on different scenarios that I want to build out. So that's our resources. I can obviously scale this up or scale this down as needed. I can position it where I'd like in the environment here by modifying my XYZ coordinates, translation and rotation, and I can turn things on and off as far as visibility. But you can see here's the model that I have in this environment. Then on the 2D side, if I click on that, so behind this, I've actually got some information. So when I click on the ski loops, or when I click on the spring, or if I click on the ski itself, it's actually going to present some additional information for me. So this allows me to let the user select things on the screen and get visual feedback. So if somebody, for example, wants to order new parts and they want to know what this what the new higher spring rate spring is, what it costs, I can just have that available so they can click on it and then get that information. Or if they need to order a brand new ski, they got a little too aggressive and ran over a rock and broke the ski, whatever, they can click on that and get the information back from that directly. So again, there's really two components. It's sort of an overlay that I can add that extra information in for the user as they're working with the model. So that's sort of an overview of that. The spatial target here, you'll find this guy right here, the spatial target is actually keyed off on this little location right here in front of the ski. So that's where, when I look at this experience through my phone, I'm going to click on a flat space or a flat location on my desktop or my conference table, and that's going to be the key location that it's going to work off of. So when I touch that spot, everything is going to be based off of that location of that spatial target. And you can, obviously scale that up or down or change its location wherever you'd like it to be. And then when you're working in this in your tablet or your HoloLens environment, you can, sort of interact with that. But it's all going to be based off of this location that you get to select when you place that in the model. So if we preview that, I'll go ahead and just click on the preview here. This will open up in a secondary window to show me what this is going to look like. I can preview this in either a tablet or a phone type environment to give me an idea about what this is going to look like. After we create the experience and the 2D interface that we want, we can go ahead and do a preview of that to show the users what that's going to look like. We'll go ahead and select preview, and that will pop open our little preview experience here. Note that I can change the size based on the device, or I can also specify a resolution. I can flip the orientation between portrait and landscape, and then I can interact with the object just as I would on the screen using my fingers. And if I wanted to select on an item here, say we want to find out information about the ski, we can go ahead and click on that, or the spring, for example, and get extra information about that. So that's a look at what the preview the experience looks like. Publishing, as I said, we'll just talk about that. Publishing, that is really quite simple. You basically just hit the publish button, and what that's going to do is take all of this information. Apparently, this is not logged in here. I guess that might be my issue. But the publishing takes all that information, again, the 2D information as far as the graphic interface for that environment, the 3D information, and all of the other stuff that binds that all together, and publishes that up to the Vuforia server, and then I can just basically point my phone at that thing mark, and it'll open up the experience from there. The other thing that I would talk about is how do we get here to this point, right? So this actually would use the tool Creo Illustrate. So if we take a look at that, this is where all of the different representations and the animations and things like that get built, if you will. So in this case, if I was to when I get that preview working, I can actually show the assembly instructions here. And the first step actually uses a screwdriver and backs out this little screw. And then we take the wrench on the other side and hold that, right? And I've got the second step, which is a wrench on either side of that bolt, and it'll take out that retaining bolt here in the middle. And then the third step is actually lifting up that ski loop. And there's different steps for that I would show in that preview. But you build all of the different animation sequences and the different steps that you want to present to the user in the experience. You would build that here in the Creo Illustrate tool. And then you simply tie that to appropriate buttons that you build up in the user interface in the Vuforia Studio tool. So you're basically setting up the steps you want here, and then you're turning them on and wrapping an interface around that using the Studio tool, if that makes sense. So that's an overview of the process. So that's what I had as far as that. If we went back to, if there's no questions on that, we can bounce back to the PowerPoint here. sharing the experiences with everybody, right? So it's one of the options is to share out the information from Vuforia Studio using these links, right? So it's allowing you to update that information. So if something changes in the underlying CAD model, or you want to change something in the user interface, for example, you don't have to go back and rebuild everything. You'll just update that information, and that link will then make sure that that content is the most up-to-date content is delivered to the user when they access that thing mark or that URL again. So why would you think about using Vuforia Studio? Well, so these bullet points kind of summarize it nicely, right? You can speed up the time to value, right? So you don't have to do a whole bunch of programming to get there because you've got this nice IDE, integrated development environment that you can use to build out the experiences leveraging the CAD data that you've got. Decreases development costs, right? You're using that 3D data in more than one way, in more than just the historical or traditional way of making a part, making an assembly, making drawings, and handing that off to whoever needs to fabricate that, right? So now you can actually leverage that information in a myriad of ways, whether that's assembly instructions or sales and marketing or service information. Lots of different ways to leverage that information. You already have it. It's just finding other uses for it and making it more valuable to your customers, whether they're internal to your organization or external as end customers or users. Again, streamlining the enterprise scalability, just kind of a different way of saying what I just said, right? So accessing that information that you're building up in design and development and sharing that across the organization and for your end users. The final bullet point, deliver actionable insights, right? So instead of just building your product and shipping it off to your customer and kind of wondering how it's working for them in the field, you can now get real-time feedback on that from the sensors and information that your product is creating, and you can get information from that using the IoT connection through Vuforia Studio and ThingWorx. So you can have that set up so they can get real-time information back from the process, temperatures, pressures, whatever information is being gathered from the sensors on the machine in the smart connected product or smart connected operation, and be able to do something with that information. So now you have information that's being collected by your product. What are you going to do with it, right? So now you can tell whether you need to change your design, add more material, do design optimization, change your process, provide service or maintenance at different intervals or whatever. You now have actionable information that you can get from the product because you're interacting with it in real time instead of just kind of sending it out there and waiting until something breaks or getting a field report back that says something didn't work the way it was intended. So again, game-changing solution, right? It's changing the way that we look at our products and the way that we interact with things in the world, right? So it gives you different tools that you didn't have before. So instead of just creating CAD content and producing it, the final end product, we can now interact with it and find out how our customers are using things and change the way we develop our product and respond and react and use that information to improve our product for our customers. So that's the last slide. On this slide, you will find a link to a trial, right? So Vuforia studio.vuforia.com. You can log in, create yourself a little test environment, and start to look at the Vuforia Studio as an application and start to see how that.